and that official narrative begins in 1848. So anything that happened before 1848 gets erased, right? Anything that happens after the pioneers also gets erased. So as we were developing and thinking about our work, El Monte was going to turn 100, and we had a problem with the ways in which our history had been told, because it excluded the Tongva who were here before the pioneers, it excluded the Tongva who were here after the pioneers, it excluded Mexicans, it excluded Japanese Americans, it excluded Chinese, it basically excluded anyone who was not white. And it also excluded folks who were white who didn't align with the pioneer narrative. It excluded folks like Father Caulfield, right, who helped desegregate schools. It excluded folks like Art Laboe, who led sort of some of the first multiracial dance sort of movements, right? So in other words, this narrative was a problem. Now, we had a problem too, which was that if we go to UCLA, to their archives, there is no El Monte box, right? There's no box that says, here's El Monte history, here are all the sources related to El Monte history. So we knew that we had to essentially build the archive. So we collected stories in people's garages, we went to their houses, we called our uncles, we were like, do you know about this, do you know about that? And slowly we started to build an archive with community about our history. And slowly over time, what we essentially did is we started collecting enough material that was related to each other and giving it to folks, saying, hey, we know you don't know a lot about this, or we know you study this, could you write an essay based on these sources? And it was through that process that we essentially wrote this 300-year history of El Monte that not just adds new characters, but that tells an accurate history of El Monte, right? Which includes saying that the end of the Santa Fe Trail does not end in El Monte, right? But more importantly, it's a multi-ethnic history that really does think about radical politics and really reorients what a pioneer is and what's worthy of documenting, right? So the book itself thinks about the Mexican anarchists who were here. The book looks at the Berry Strike, which was organized by Mexican Americans, Filipinos, and some Japanese workers, right? It looks at the tides, which we'll talk about today, right? Which is folks resisting slave labor. So the book itself does that, but it's also written in ways that are accessible and approachable. And I'll say one more thing about this, which is that we wanted to also have the book be an invitation to younger writers to write more narratives. So the entire archive that we created will exist online, and if you go there on your phone now, it's cmapeastofelast.com, and you'll see primary sources, you'll see oral histories, you'll see all these different documents that are related to it. And on the tour today, there's a sort of parallel mirror page that is dedicated just to this tour, right? So on the tour, I'll give you a little QR code, you can scan it, and you'll see some of the places that we're talking about. The last thing perhaps that's important to mention is that this bike ride is part of a sort of larger, more embracive project to really think about how we teach history, right? So part of the goal here is to make it familiar, to make it quotidian, to have, grandpas and grandkids and everything in between sharing a space and learning together. And as part of that, we're also building curriculum at the high schools with teachers themselves, right? So the idea is that these histories will be in the classrooms, right? These histories will be with us today, exist in the streets, and these histories, some of them are also documented at the mall, at the mural that we'll see at the end of the day. Yeah.